Welcome in and thank you for making the Hoops Cap part of your daily routine, your home for UConn men's and women's basketball. We're available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Big East Podcast Collective, where passion meets precision. Before we dive into today's show, I want to take a moment to say I appreciate everybody that's already subscribed to the show. But if you haven't already, subscribe. We built up a really great channel over at Locked On UConn, and we're trying to recreate that a little bit here over at the Hoops Cap. And really kind of not miss a beat. I'm still doing, as soon as I'm done with this, we're going to go over to the women's side and talk with T. Baker about the prospects of the women getting to the Final Four and everything that goes with that and getting to Tampa. So we're proud to say we're the only daily podcast covering the UConn men's and women's basketball programs, the Hoops Capital of the World. And that's what the name of the podcast says, because we're contractually can't really say the basketball capital of the world because that's a copyright of the UConn, and we're not affiliated with the school. I wanted to come up with something that is more of an association with us, the Hoops Capital of the World. So the Hoops Cap Pod is kind of a quick little abbreviation. So HCP, if you want to even really make it even shorter. But the first domino dropped in Isaiah Abraham. So I recorded something with the grid behind me of who is still on this team, I think you guys have seen this before. If you're listening on audio, it's just a grid of who the seniors, juniors, sophomores, and freshmen, incoming freshmen are. So I'm going to play that now as part of the first segment, and then we're going to move forward. So check this out, something I did earlier today of giving percentages of who I think is staying and who I think is going.
All right, let's talk about this really quick. So with Isaiah Abraham now in the portal, the scholarship grid looks like this. I think we're going to lose the following players from what's projected from the 25-26 season. So right now, because they're moving to 15 scholarships next year, there's two open spots. So it says 0 on the UConn men's basketball scholarship grid here, but let's just take them in order. First off, Alex Caravan I would say he's 50-50. If you listen to our good friend Jared Kotler's Connecticut Scoreboard podcast, really appreciate him doing that, and also Alex for doing that. He said he hasn't really decided. He's going to keep the circle tight, which is a good thing, and kind of let people know what he's up to. You kind of have to put it at 50-50 or 60-40, maybe one way. I think the next one is if we just go in order, I think Aiden's the same way. I think you could definitely see him going to a West Coast team to get closer to home and not have such an intense season. And then the same thing goes to Terrace. Terrace is a monster when he wants to be. But if you think about his demeanor, his ability to summon what Dan Hurley and this staff wants on a day-to-day basis, it just may not be a cultural fit just from a coach to player standpoint. Great kid, phenomenal family. I've heard great things about his parents, being at stores and being wonderful and gracious to everybody. And same thing with Terrace. He's kind of a different kid. He doesn't have, what one would call killer instinct, just innately. And, if you're a coach, if you're Dan Hurley, do you want to have to coax this kid's inner bear, so to speak, right? Because everyone's calling him a grizzly bear, every game. If we get that Terrace read, like I'm literally just going off of what Dan has said in press conferences. Do you want that Terrace read every other game? Some of you do. I honestly don't have an opinion when it comes to transfer portal. I honestly feel as if the people are so volatile. It may go back to my experience in recruiting where, someone says, yes, I want to take the job. And then a week later, you're like, man, I'm going to get a big commission off of this. I'm so excited. And then a week later, that person pulls out and you're like, and you're back to sourcing and you're back to finding, basically back to the portal. And so I've dealt with portaling for a very long time. And so I know how this stuff goes. So if you're going to tell me the most important players that we need to keep, it's got to be Solo. You have to keep Solo. You you have to lock him down. So whatever Solo wants, Solo should get. If the budget is X, he should get a lot of that budget because he was the biggest bump freshman to sophomore year, and you want to keep him for that junior year where he could potentially be an All-American. Then it gets a little murky. You got these four in the the what are they called? Like the little yellow cards, not the green ones, but you have Darius, Shakeup, Braylon, and Eric that are coming. None of those guys are flipping, so everyone relax. Don't listen to any of the clickbait bullshit that you hear from Indiana about how like Braylon may flip. It's all BS. Ahmad, I believe, is gone. I think we've all felt that for a while now. It's too bad he didn't get an opportunity. It's too bad that he's gonna leave, but you got to do what you got to do. Liam, it's so interesting that people truly think that this kid is he needs to stay for another year. It's like I respect the people who say that because in if it wasn't 2025 and there were less underclassmen that would leave once they're projected, I see that. But when you live in the now, when you live in the way the NBA sees these people, sees these potential prospects, is where will this kid be in 4 years? And where Liam will be when he's 23 or 24, when he's coming up on that first mega contract, outside of the guaranteed money you get as a rookie, as a first round pick, especially a lottery pick where they think he's going to be. I think you definitely look at that. And I'll point to the Florida game. Could he have been better? Absolutely. Could he have hit some more clutch shots? Yes. But an NBA GM is going to look at that game and go, "Oh man, he shot what for what?" And then he also made 10 for 10 from the free throw line. He still had 22 points. I think he had 7 rebounds. The kid competes even when he's not shooting at a high clip. He's not afraid to keep shooting. Some of the things that some of the stuff that people were mad about Alex, Liam doesn't have. And Liam is a competitor. He gets to the rim and he gets fouled, and that's just part of it. So he's gone. Let's put that to rest. I think you can get Jalen Stewart back, but I think Jalen Stewart is already fielding offers and out there in the portal. You just have to take people for their word. Jamar has been an amazing UConn parent, and he went on Twitter and said, "Hey, this is what it is. We're essentially going to, didn't say that they're going to portal, but he did say everything was in past tense. UConn has been amazing. The UConn fans have been like family. So maybe it's a preemptive goodbye, but you still have to take that for what it is. And I think Jalen is leaning towards leaving. Then you have Youssef, who is a vibes guy, got a little bit of minutes earlier in the year when we got some crazy foul trouble early in the game. Does he come back? Who knows? I could see it, but I could also see him going the Apostolos, going to like a UMass or a where did he go? I forget where Apostolos went, but either way, going to a smaller D1 school where he can get some run, and maybe he gets a big offer from an SEC school, like big for him, like in terms of they have a lot of money to spend. I don't know. 7-footers don't grow on trees, so. He'll have interest. And then Jaden Ross. I think Jaden stays, to be honest with you, because I think he is the type of kid that wants to stay and show that this year was kind of a fluke and that he can put on some weight and that he can really, be the player that Dan Hurley thinks he is. That's it. So when you look at this, let's look at the rundown. You have Alex 50-50, Aiden 50-50, Terrace 50-50. I think Solo is 90-10 staying. Jaden Ross, I think, is staying. Youssef, 50-50, maybe he goes. Jalen, I think, is more 80-20 on the outside. You lose Liam, you lose Ahmad, and you bring in these 4 freshmen, Darius, Shakeup, Braylon, and Eric. So that's my assessment of where we're at from a roster standpoint. Hopefully we get some good portals, because if you lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 5 guys, do you have 4 guys coming in? Yes, but you still need to add some pieces in the portal, plus you have some extra scholarships to play around with. So, yeah, I guess it's time to get to work, boys.
All right. So you saw that. That's where things are, and this stems from obviously Isaiah Abraham going in the portal, and it's a tough thing, but it's to be expected. I honestly thought they were going to keep Isaiah, but I know David Borges did a article with his dad, who was a Marquette guy, and just like really, really respectful. Like Isaiah was quoted all season as saying, like, I just need to keep working hard and wait for my opportunity, because, and that's the toughest part, is like, he seemed like a really great kid. It's unfortunate, but we move on. That's the situation with the team right now and where I think everybody's at. But let's move to the next topic, which is $5 million is the new minimum. And what we mean by that is there was multiple articles written about the new revenue sharing and how the Big East is essentially in the catbird seat. The one thing that I want to caution you guys about this on is technically they are, because 10 of the 11 teams, and us not included, doesn't have Division I football at that level. And we still don't. Like, and I say that totally honestly. Like, 9 wins last year, 1-3 against Power 4 teams, if you can call the ACC a Power 4 conference. The idea that football is all of a sudden now going to spend, $20-30 million is just not realistic. So, that's where the bread is buttered at UConn, is here at the hoops capital of the world, not the football capital of the world. We're not. I loved watching UConn football and really appreciate what they've accomplished. But the reality is, this rev sharing model is unlike the Big Ten or the SEC. The Big East is basketball first, whether you have football or not. So most Big East schools out of UConn don't have that FBS football, meaning more dollars, more focus on hoops. With the revenue sharing, incoming house versus NCAA, Big East schools are ready to spend. So UConn's 2025 budget, is it estimated at $7 million? Some Big East schools are aiming at $8 million. Xavier, Butler, St. John's already in the $4 to $6 million range. So the new minimum to compete really is about $5 million, just from a cap perspective, because that's what we have to start talking about. It's an interesting world that we live in. College hoops is no longer in the shadows with the money, because there used to be these budgets. Maybe they weren't $5 million, but dudes were getting cash for a long time. And now they just get NIL deals, which turns into money, obviously, right? So, NIL isn't optional anymore. Just 1 year ago, 2 million built a really good tournament roster, but now 5 to 10 million is kind of the new tier. I think we saw Sean Miller go to Texas, not partly because he likes to jump around. We talked to Casey Matthews on Big East Energy talking about how, some guys just kind of wear out their welcome and they want a new opportunity. And so that's part of it too. I think the biggest thing with these schools is, like, if you don't think that Kansas, Arkansas, Louisville are already playing in that $10 million range, you're crazy. So the Big East is going to always have, an advantage, because we can potentially up that, right? So if you're now using that revenue of between 10 and $20 million, and you're putting that towards 80% of that or 90% of that is going to basketball, I think that's where the Big East kind of is going to be able to compete. And yeah, I mean, there's going to be some interesting ones like Kansas, Louisville, some of the Duke. Obviously that they don't have anything to do with it, because they do, because it's a federal thing, even though it's a private school. But like the blue bloods that don't really care about football, Kentucky, they're always going to have high NIL, because people care about having the best basketball in their state. And maybe that's sad, because there's probably kids who could use money to go to boys and girls clubs. You could use them for other resources, but you know what? The bottom line is, you got to live in the real world. And the real world talks about how, the free market essentially pays for what people want to see. And there's a reason why there's 11,000 screaming fans at Campo Pavilion whenever UConn plays either the men or the women. So I think it's a really good thing. I also think it's a good thing for women's basketball too, because hopefully some of these schools invest in bringing in some talented women to play basketball. So it's not just the UConn Invitational, because I'd like to keep the Big East intact and stay here. But there's still always an option for UConn to start to kind of peek over the fence at the Big 12, because, the Big 12 is still playing big time basketball. And then there's, the football money as well. So, all right. Some other things with that, I don't think UConn's ever going to try to like outspend the SEC or, I think Hurley really likes to keep things less transactional, but as he's talked about, you have to rewire, you have to, reconfigure and recalibrate, because let's be honest, it's just part of the world. So yeah, can you win without having the highest NIL? Absolutely. But it's going to start to be a necessity to compete at the highest level. So don't forget to subscribe to the show. We're going to have one more topic we're going to discuss here coming up, and we're going to take a quick break, which just means I'm all right. I don't know why that did that, but maybe we'll edit that out. No, we're back because I paused it and then I pressed play again. So that's automatically jumps on that countdown. So if that hurt anybody's ears, I apologize. So an interesting name I just saw in the portal, which is I don't know, we're gonna find more stuff out, is Ryan Conwell. The Xavier guard just put himself in the portal. He is a 6'4", 200-pound. I mean, he crushed us this year. He had 30-something points in the Big East tournament against St. John's. Dalen Swain also left Xavier. You have to wonder if they're going to follow Sean Miller. I don't know. I don't know what the relationship is between, him and them, because, like when you think about the way we've talked about handling when you leave as a coach, do you do it in a very transparent way, the way Will Wade did, and say, hey, yeah, I'm going to essentially, I talked to NC State and, obviously took the job, and I'm sure some of his players are going to go with him from McNeese, and he's going to probably fill some other spots as well. But did Sean Miller do that? Did he get Ryan Conwell to come with him? But if he didn't, sure would love to see him in a UConn jersey that's have just crazy lefties a la Marquette with him in Solo. And he's the type of guy that you can put on the ball. You can put him off the ball. I think the thing that Dan wants this year too is a guy that can just go get it for you off script. And so, I mean, he's definitely fits that bill. And I think that's where my focus is with this basketball transfer portal is, who are the guys that UConn can get that can go off script? And there's definitely quite a few dudes that can do that. Like it sucks to lose Isaiah Abraham, but was he going to be that guy this year? No. Michael Ajayi from Gonzaga just got into the portal at 6'7". That could be someone you look at. He's had some injuries and some issues. I think there's really there's so much talent in the portal that I have no doubts that UConn is going to find a couple of guys that they feel comfortable with handing the ball to and feeling as if, they're in good shape. So I think for me, it really comes down to, finding the right point guard. It could completely change this entire roster. And honestly, it could be a combo guard. It could be a guy that can play both. And so, and the way these are the guys I look at that could potentially do this. I mean, this is a wild one, and I don't think he's going to leave the South because his brother played in the SEC and now he stars for Miami Heat. But Austin Hero just got into the transfer portal yesterday. South Carolina, he's a 6'3" combo guard, can shoot it. Probably not like his brother, but the genes are there. I think there's some dudes like let's see here. Let's look at this transfer portal. I like not Malachi Smith. How about Anquan Bolden Jr.? I love when I find a guy that is essentially a guy that I watched his dad play football, and now his son is a 6'4" combo guard from Buffalo. I mean, let's put it this way: you bring in a guy like that, you know he's going to be tough. Anquan Bolden might have been the toughest wide receiver ever to play. That dude used to get rocked and had no issue. I still keep coming back to Isaac McNeely. I would love to see UConn get a kid like this. I have no idea. I know that he's got some interest from, the North Carolinas of the world, and I think Tennessee is even sniffing around him, even though they're still playing. But I don't know, man. Like that makes a ton of sense for me to have a kid like that. Indiana, Ohio State, Cincinnati is kind of kicking the tires on Isaac, so we'll see. I think it's also interesting that Bryce Hopkins is choosing between St. John's and Georgetown. I don't necessarily know if I care, and this will go back to when we do the Big East Energy show next week. But is anyone worried about Bryce Hopkins being like a really good player for either of those teams? He could be a nice piece, but the kid's been injured for most of his college career, and it's sad for him. But as a UConn fan, like I'm not as concerned. I'm more concerned that they got that St. John's got Jason Sonon. And I'm probably saying his name wrong because I do that all the time. And that could be that could have been a guy that UConn was big on. The Georgia guard is another one that I'm curious on. He's I can't think of his name off the top of my head. I'll find him right now. He's like 6'5", and he played. I think he was a sophomore last year. Silas DeMary, really good player. Number 2 scorer on the team, averaged just under 6'5" sophomore. He's from Raleigh. UConn has done some work on these guys, either playing at Word of God, which is a Raleigh school down here that does that. That's a like an academy, right? He said his decision involved trying to test the waters of the NBA after his impressive season with scoring. I think he's going to find that the NBA is not going to draft him, and then he'll get back in the portal. We'll see. But this article is making me want to say no. And it's not because, look, you play one season at Georgia where you average 13.5 points, and Georgia makes the NCAA tournament and gets destroyed by Gonzaga, and you think you're ready for the NBA. May not be a kid that I want on my team. I'm just saying. Like I will be. The best thing about my move away from Locked On is I can tell you exactly how I feel about any of these kids and have zero consequences with it. But yeah, I don't want a kid that thinks because he played a decent year at Georgia that he's ready for the NBA. Sorry. And then that same sentiment, then people will be like, well, why do you think Liam is ready? Because he, played a full season, most of the season with UConn. He's been under Dan Hurley's tutelage. And if you look at any mock draft that anyone's ever done, he hasn't slipped lower than 20 in first round. So that's that. Okay. That's today's show. I'll probably do some shows over the weekend, to be honest with you, because my wife is out of town. So we'll get a jump start on next week. And especially if there's any breaking news, I'll definitely jump on. If you heard anything in the background, I apologize. My kids are a little wild today, and you could actually hear them on some of the segments. But this has been an episode of Big East. And I'm sorry, this has been another episode of the Hoops Cat Pod on the Big East Energy Collective. That's going to take a little while for me to get used to saying. But if anything, we're going to learn together. I appreciate you guys. Really try to, to subscribe to the show. Make sure you're checking out the audio versions wherever they are. And I'm going to try to get everything squared away. Also, here over the weekend and probably into next week. Check out BigEastEnergy.com. That's a website that we're building that's kind of slowly starting to add different things. There'll be some merch that you guys can purchase to help us out. And some good stuff that'll have the Big East Energy logo, the Hoops Cap logo, things of that nature. So if you want to support what we're doing here, that'd be the best way. All right. This has been another episode of the Hoops Cap for Mark Zanetto. Love you guys.